Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you, André, for this wonderful speech and demonstration of commitment. My role is to try to sort of draw, if I can, a parallel between what I think could be the way you get more into this field of sustainability and the way we got into this field of sustainability. So in order to start, I would like just to say that the first driver of the conversion of approximately 100% of the investment forces of Lombard Odier into sustainable investing has come from the conviction that our economic model has come to a limit. Now, probably this conviction, we sort of share it more or less all, but the way to translate that into an activable policy into a company is less easy. And the way we started doing it is by making sure that we would define why these limits are reached and what could be the solutions to overcome the, of course, negative and fatal conclusion if we continue to do what we're doing. And one way of doing it is to say growth is important to all of us. It's important to the welfare of our countries. It's important to reducing precarity. It's important to develop the revenues of our companies, whether in the legal field or in the banking field or in the pharmaceutical field. So we have to decouple the growth from its negative impact. And believe it or not, we can do that. And I think we can do that due to many factors, and I think many factors that we can little by little better explain and measure. And I think this is why we're now in a position, for instance, at Lombard Odier, to say that 80% of our total managed assets are managed according to the lenses and grids of sustainable investing, 80%. 6 years ago, 5% of our clients were asking us questions about it. People who were talking about it, like me, were considered as illuminated people. And today, there's perhaps 1% of the demand that are applying to our mandates and to our expertise that have not to do with sustainability. So the world has completely changed. And I think if the world has changed, it means also that probably the drivers for return in portfolios, mind you, I'm only a banker. Actually, if you had to find jokes on bankers, it would be even more difficult because it's not funny at all. But it's absolutely fantastic to see that how easy it has become for bankers and for capital to play a role in this transformation. Why? First of all, not only because clients are demanding it, but because we are slowly but surely discovering that sustainably investing is probably the biggest source of future return that you can imagine to have on a risk-weighted basis, i.e. taking the same level of risk to apply a criteria that have to do with sustainability will simply, not more, not less, improve the return of your portfolios. If this is so, we are just in a business that can be fully egoistic and have great purpose. And I think this is a fantastic change of the industry. I'm sure you would all agree with that point. What are the four driving forces? First, the consumers. I just explained that our clients are asking us to do things, so we better listen to them. I think your clients are going to ask the same thing, one way or another, whether government, international organizations, corporations, or private. Second, because regulatory bodies, such as ours, but also worldwide, are slowly but surely also implementing new rules. For instance, in the financial field, there's over 400 regulations that have to do with how to invest sustainably when you are an active member of the financial community. Thirdly, and of course I include in the regulators the politicians that are better elected by defending green causes or sustainable causes than by defending the financial sector, for instance. And thirdly, also because technology allows us to solve problems in a very different way. Today, you have means of alleviating some of those negative growth impact by simply applying technology to the same things that you've been doing until here, just changing the how. And finally, by capital. Companies, corporations worldwide have understood that capital means it seriously, meaning that at the image of Mark Carney, who went to the WEF, you were with me, André, we went, he gave us 10 minutes at the WEF. It was very nice. And he gave us, the financial sector, 10 minutes, and he told us, look guys, if you don't understand that you have to look at the financial risks embedded into your lending and your participation with regard to climate change, we're going to ask you to provide or provision more capital for it. And you know, when you tell a banker he has to put more capital at use, I'm thinking he understands that very quickly. So capital is going to play a huge role, and the corporations that are going to get that capital will understand that very quickly, because the more capital flows to some, the cheaper will be this capital, the less it will, the more expensive it will. So it will be a disadvantage. So these are the reasons why this is happening. And these are the reasons why we don't feel that we are missionaries of any sort. I don't believe that I have a divine mission of passing the right words on sustainability. It happens to be that I fully believe, and I'm convinced, as André is, that something really serious has to happen and will happen. But it is simply a notion of exercising correctly our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we translate in our words, in our tools, in our methodologies, and in our advice, these observations that I just made. So perhaps just to show a little more precisely an image to make it a bit funnier. This very scenario for us as investment people leads us to think about what is the sustainable economic model that we should think about when we start our profession. What is it that we have to wake up with in the morning as an idea of the world that should be sustainable, and where are the perhaps trends that will make that world much more different in the future? So we have identified 10 trends, and we have translated this to 10 trends into implication for about 160 activities. If you sum it up globally in the world, there's about 160, 180 what we could call industrial activities. So we've looked at these 180 activities, and we've determined for each of these industries and sectors what is the world is material. What is material? And if it is material for the sector, it's going to be a material for the company. And that's where we start looking at these trends from a company perspective and try to identify those companies that will transition from a current situation that probably creates more damages than it creates new ways of preserving environmental and other types of priorities to a new model. And also the companies that will, through, for instance, technology, be solution providers. Think of everything that has to do with flying differently, trying to have mobility engines that changing the way you produce energy, produce medication, etc., etc. So for us, we have identified the big problem first, which is, of course, the climate change. And that's why we've put a lot of emphasis for years and years. Actually, Lombard, we can say we started already as an incepted company and being sustainable, because we're still here 224 years later. But actually, from an investment point of view, what we really did is about 25 years ago, we started bringing all the actors together, and that's where Ethos, the foundation, Ethos Stiftung, was created. And we created that Stiftung to do exactly what it does today, to pick us in the back, make sure that we don't sleep on our convictions, and we make sure that we listen correctly to the trends. So the big change here is, of course, the big problem is the carbon transition. We all know about the objectives of the Paris Convention. We all know, as we heard today, that we're not there yet. But we also know that we can translate that, to answer your question, Jean-Philippe, into metrics. And we, at Lombard, we decided, and I think the world will do it, actually, to translate that into one simple metrics. The same as you do when you want to take your temperature. Okay, you do this, you know, if you can stay at home when you have to go to the office. Well, actually, we can measure the temperature of any investment. And the temperature of any investment is really consisting of trying to understand what is the contribution of a company to the elevation or the reduction of the temperature on its scopes of activities worldwide. And you can, by this, sensitize sensibilize, if you wish, the investors by telling them, do you agree with the fact that your portfolio is contributing to an elevation of temperature of 3.5 degrees for the next 20 years, or do you think you should change that? And once this is done, then it goes very quickly, because of course a few people only will agree that temperature doesn't matter, and that you could do many other things than bothering about that. So what we're looking at, of course, is that big trend to make sure that we don't only understand how companies should produce, but what they produce. So it's not about how only, which is what ESG basically is having to do. It is about what. What is it that the company does in reality? And then, of course, it's better to do it correctly. So we're looking, at this wild economy that was described as an economy that is extremely wasteful. I mean, no need to explain. An idle economy. Think about your car, your secondary home, how much of the time you use it, and how much it's empty. It's an economy that is lopsided. Look at the number of people that are, say, aside of growth by definition. Of course, it's been reduced, but still the gap is increasing, and it's an economy, as you know, that is dirty for many reasons. Actually, you can see here just one figure. Only 9% of resources come from recycled material. So it gives you the scope of improvement, if not only from that perspective. Again, I don't want to be too long, but to capture the attention of our counterparts, stakeholders in general, we speak from now on about going from the wild economy to the click economy, which is a clean, lean, inclusive, and circular economy. I think all those words are well understood to you, but they all correspond to figures that you can put on those elements and a theme. And also, if it corresponds to figures, you can start to develop metrics in order to sort of fixed objectives towards which you should individually or collectively work. So, for instance, now we're working on nature. I'm sure it will please André very much. And we're working with WWF to make sure we understand capital nature. Capital nature. The nature provides more than 50% of the resources on the basis of which the global GDP in the world is being produced. Right? So it means we depend, if you just don't think about anything else but what you do in terms of producing, more than 50% comes from nature one way or another. So we want to deal with this issue, and we need to measure what is the impact of an activity on preserving or recapturing or perhaps inventing some of the nature that we've lost along the years. Will it be the number of square meters that we will recapture by an activity or another? Perhaps by reforesting. Will it be something else? I don't know. By creating water capacities, will it be water? I don't know yet. But we will, very shortly, with WWF, be in a position to do that. So our jobs starts with there. And if it starts with there, I think it's the job of every service company to provide service in this direction. And I think the legal profession, if not in regulation, should also wonder how it can bring its contribution. So let me just move a step further to the second part of the presentation, which has to do with our walking the talk. Actually, the last thing I wanted to do, and my biggest nightmare beside being caught in a tramway without my ticket, is to be waking up in the morning with a client that asked me, so, Mr. Odier, what are you doing about sustainability in your own firm? And sort of being stuck with no answer. So of course we have answers, but we can't prove what they are. So what we said is the best thing to do is to look at the most recognized certification in the world, which is, beside a few others, is probably the B-Corp certification that applies to a little over 3,000 companies in the world, and to try to go through that exercise. One caveat: if you ask all of you in the room if you want to do it, probably you will never take the decision. Never. So you have to define who is going to take the decision and let him do it. If we had done it with 7 partners, we are 7 partners in our firm, I can promise you we would never have done that. And so we went through that process of determining what are the issues on which we need to learn in order to be fully aligned and congruent with what we're just saying to our clients and to the companies we want to invest in. And in order to do that, we went through a quite lengthy exercise of 2 years, going through each and every policy of the firm, trying to see where not only we were missing points, but where we were doing also good. And actually, the B-Corp certification, for you who don't know about it, is an interesting certification because it's not a shaming or naming type of certification. It's a certification that tells you where you do things correctly. And if you get over a certain bar, it means you do enough things correctly to be qualified as a B Corp. Doesn't mean you do everything good. So the other thing is that if I'm getting just above or just enough to get it, what else should I do to make it to the higher standards? And that's where you start learning really quickly about where you can be transformative into your policies. It could be in social, it could be in environmental, it could be in dealing with your stakeholders and many things of such nature. In our case, we looked at really the way of taking the lead on some initiatives, not only as a top management, but giving that lead to our people. So the good news about the B Corp certification is that it is a number of information or set of information that can be extremely useful to trigger the incentive for the population of our group to take actions and to take the lead. If you just do it as a management exercise, you will never make it. It is transformative. I mean, we're doing things that we couldn't think about 5 to 10 years ago. Very, very simple things, such as making sure we don't waste water, making sure that we are building a building now with lots of criteria that we wouldn't have thought about 10 years ago, including recycling every single type of material that we're using. And of course, we're also looking at neutral third-party assessment, i.e. trying to make sure that we are completely coherent in everything we do. So the full sustainability alignment with our product and service strategy was one of the results that was gotten through that certification. You can all read them here. I don't want to go in all, but I think it was the most important. And perhaps also, we also had a huge impact on our clients, because the fact that you can demonstrate to your clients what is the impact of this B certification on the behavior of your company, on the what you do instead of only how you do, has been really, really adding to the trust our clients have shown to us. So for us, for everybody, the 5 chapters that you're going through when you go through that certification are: 1, governance. How are you governed? Who takes the decision? What's the participation rate? Do you participate in terms of earnings or in terms of voting? And how do you share this among your management teams? The workers, how you treat them? No need to explain. The youngest, the more senior. The environment, of course, the water, the electricity, the waste in general. The community, what's your action in community? How can you demonstrate, measure the improvement and the progress? And finally, the customers. For us, of course, we were pretty well rated on some of them, and perhaps weaker on others. When you're a partnership of 7 partners owning 100% of a group for 224 years, usually you're not probably giving perhaps the right financial incentives that other listed companies could give to your employees. But we have to find other ways to do it, and that's triggered a governance reflection by us that was really useful. So here are a number of companies that you see the logos of that have been going through that certification. You see that you can be in the yogurt business, you can be into the banking, of course, you can be in the sports garment business, etc. A number of Switzerland, of course. I would choose another slide if I were in France. And this is what I wanted to tell you about B-Corp, just to confirm that B-Corp for us is an exercise that is really worthwhile, aligning what we do with what we ask our clients and our investee company to do. So that's why I think it is worthwhile thinking of it when you are in the service industry. Thank you very much for your attention.